So in this video, I am going to show you how to analyze and then write up your biological practical. I'm going to first of all start off with what resources you're going to need, and then I'll break down what you need to do, hopefully step by step, and eventually get you to the point where you can perform the analysis and do the write-up yourself. So what resources are you going to need? You're going to need your notes on the aims and hypotheses. I'm going to go through those again in a moment, so if you need to find those again, you can in a second in the video. You're going to need your completed and scored bus-peri and content media exposure questionnaires. Remember that both of these are self-report. You should have somewhere between about 15 and 20 of them in your groups. You do need at least 15, and it is much, much better to have 20. Don't have any more than 20 though, because the spreadsheet only goes up to 20. You'll need the biological practical Excel workbook, which I will go through with you in a moment. And you'll also need, and this is just to help you really, a biological practical summary Word document. This is a template that you can download and use to fill in your notes on this, then print it out, or if you wanted to, you could just handwrite things. The number 4 is really there just to support you as you need it. So let's deal with the aims and hypotheses first. So the aim is to see if levels of self-reported aggression are linked to levels of self-reported media exposure, whether that media exposure is good, so pro-social, people helping each other, or negative, so anti-social, people hurting each other. So we're looking at a link between them. This is a correlational practical. It is not going to give you a cause and effect. So it isn't an experiment, and that's really important to get across in your evaluation, that you're never from this going to be able to tell, did the aggression cause the viewing of whatever, whether it's pro-social or anti-social media, or did watching the anti or pro-social media change the aggression levels? You can't see that, you can't, but you can see if they were linked together. Your 2 hypotheses are: there will be a significant positive correlation between aggression scores on the bus-peri and anti-social media exposure scores on the content media exposure scale. Your other hypothesis is that there will be a significant negative correlation between aggression scores on the bus-peri and pro-social media exposure scores on the content media exposure scale. In other words, with this particular one, as aggression scores increase, so does self-reported anti-social media exposure. So people are saying that they're watching more anti-social stuff. As aggression scores decrease, people are saying that they are being exposed to more pro-social media, films or TV programs or computer games. So in other words, the more pro-social stuff you are experiencing, the less aggressive you are. Next thing I'm going to do is talk about the scoring. So the scoring mechanism for the content media exposure scale works like this. There are 2 scales. The first one is your anti-social score. That is a maximum of 60, and you're going to add up these questions. Higher scores mean that more anti-social media has been consumed or viewed in the past 6 months. The pro-social score is a maximum of 50, and you add up these questions. And higher scores on this mean that more pro-social, the higher the score, the more pro-social media is being consumed in the past 6 months. Pause the video here so that you can see your scoring mechanism and make sure you get the content media exposure scale scored. To score the bus-peri aggression scale, you need to First of all, reverse score two items, items 7 and 18. So if on item 7, for example, somebody had put 1, you would change that to a 7. If they put a 2, you would change that to a 6. If on item 18 they put a 7, you would change that to a 1. If they put a 6, you would change that to a 2. So you're basically reverse scoring these. And it's only these two that you need to do that to. You then add up all the questions, including the reverse scores, to get the final aggression score. You should get a maximum score of 203. Higher scores mean higher levels of self-reported aggression, and that's both physical and verbal. Again, pause the video and make sure that you do the scoring for this as well. Once you've done the scoring for both of the scales, then come back to the next part of the video, which will show you how to input the data and analyze it. So what I'm showing you now is how to use the biological practical workbook. So it is a spreadsheet in Excel that you can download and from Satchel 1, and then you can fill it in with your own group's data. Now, just a bit of a word of warning, you need to make sure that every person in your group ends up with the same spreadsheet, just in case at the end of the lesson somebody saves it into their area. Make sure you email that out to everybody so that everyone's got a copy, just in case somebody's ill. And then suddenly you find yourself in the next lesson without the data and without being able to do anything. So it's really important that you do that, because at the moment we don't have any way to share those files other by doing it this way. So what we've got here is we've got 4 sheets. They're labelled down here. One says raw data table, scatter graph, Spearman's rank, and then some help on the write-up. So I'm going to deal with each one in turn. So let's start off with your raw data table. There's an example down here of how you fill it in, and you're putting in capital M for male, F for female, NB stands for non-binary, and you put your ages in, and then you put your bus-peri score in, and you put your antisocial score in, and it will do the rest for you. So let me just demonstrate that and show you how this works. So I'm just going to put in some random data here. So I've got a female, this person is 16, and she has a bus-peri score of 109. And she has an antisocial score on the content media exposure scale of something like 30. She has a pro-social score of something like 45. I'm going to do another person, so I'm going to do a male this time, 18 years old, 140 on the bus-peri, antisocial, let's make that pretty high, pro-social, let's make that pretty low. And what you'll see happening is that it starts working out the ranks for you, and it works out the ranks for both the bus-peri, so for the bus-peri, for the antisocial rank, and for the pro-social rank. So the only columns you need to worry about are putting stuff into here, and notice there are spaces for 20 people. Over here, you'll see that it will automatically count up for you how many people you have in your sample, so you'll be able to use that in your write-up. So let me put in somebody who's reported themselves as non-binary, make that person 17, give them a couple of random scores, there we go. Just made that up. And you're going to see a couple of things happening as well. So notice that it's now adding up how many people are in the sample, just to demonstrate that it does count things properly. There you go. And it also works out the mean and the standard deviation for the age, for the bus-peri, and for these scores as well. So you'll be able to see where things are going roughly overall, and where the scores are going, and what the spread of your data is as well. So that's the first part that you need to do. So you need to fill out all of that first of all. The second thing you need to do is you then need to move towards the scatter graph. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment with some example data. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you how this spreadsheet actually helps you. I've filled in the data. It's semi-random. The only columns that I needed to fill in were these ones here, the ones I've just highlighted. It's given me and worked out the sample information so I can see my balance of male, female, and non-binary. It's given me my distribution, so my central tendency for the mean, for the age, the bus-peri, and the antisocial prosocial scores. And it's given me the spread of scores by looking at the standard deviation. And obviously, the bigger the standard deviation, the more spread out the data is. So it looks, for example, that the age is pretty tight around the mean. It looks like that most people are going to be somewhere between 16 and 18 years old, which is kind of what you'd expect. So let's have a look and see what that produces in terms of the scatter graphs. So the scatter graph, there are two of them and they are automatic. The really important thing is that you can see and interpret what's happening here. I have massaged this data, shall we say, so it shows you a positive correlation for aggression scores and antisocial media, but yours might show something different. It might show a much weaker correlation. It might not show any correlation. That's absolutely fine. On the x-axis, you'll see the bus-peri aggression score. And on the y-axis, you will see the antisocial score for the content media questionnaire. You can copy and paste these into Word if you want. Or if you wanted to, you could just print this out and stick it into your notes as well. It's totally up to you how you use these. Next to each chart, you'll see a interpretation. When it will say, what does that chart show about the correlation? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is there no correlation? There's also a bit of a sense check in the sense that are there significant outliers? What's that happening? So if you move your mouse over, for example, this one here, or you move your mouse over this particular person over there, it'll show you in Excel what the data is, and it'll give you an idea of, are these people very different from everybody else? Are they outside of that trend, which looks like it's upwards? You've got exactly the same thing for the aggression and pro-social media in the last 6 months. Again, this will generate itself automatically. Again, what you need to do is interpret it. Say if it's positive, negative, is it strong, is it weak? Does it look like there are significant outliers? What impact might those be having? And again, you can use these graphs and these boxes however you wish. You can print them out, you can copy them, however you want to do it. So you've looked at the scatter graph and interpreted those. You now need to start to work out your Spearman's correlation. And I've taken this to a certain point, but then you'll need to carry it on from there. So what you'll see is you'll see the participants all lined up here with their ranks. It does, the first thing is it shows you what the original hypothesis was. It then shows you the ranks for bus-peri. On this one, it shows you the ranks for antisocial. It works out the differences between the ranks and it works out the squares. Then it adds it all up for you. So you will end up with the sum of d squared. What you need to do is feed it into this formula. And then you need to work out whether it is significant or not. And you are using a one-tailed test, 5% level of significance. And you need to basically figure out, once you've done your calculation, is it significant or is it not significant? I'm going to leave that one down to you. The only thing I would say is that because it's a Spearman's and it's got a grr sound in it, your value, the one that you calculate, has got to be greater than or equal to the one you find in the table. So your calculated value has got to be greater than the or equal to the critical value in order for this to be significant. You've also got some examples here of how you might write up your Spearmans, and I want you to follow these a bit like a recipe. Again, you can put your summaries into these boxes, but this gives you an idea about how to actually go about doing it. Okay, and you'll need to do that twice, once for the first hypothesis about anti-social media, and then again for pro-social media, and see what you get. And it doesn't matter if things are significant or not significant. The final sheet in this workbook gives you some advice on how to do the write-up, and it will give you the same advice that you've always seen before. AO3 has got to be specific to this practical and not generic, so it can't just be about anything, any practical. Remember that this is not an experiment, it is a correlational study. Just be very careful when you're doing that. So when you're talking about hypotheses, you're talking about experimental hypotheses, you're talking about alternative ones. I've given you some ideas about what to include for AO1, so aim, hypotheses, procedure, results, conclusions. And I've also got you here to try to think about some of the issues that you might want to consider for your evaluation. So the generalizability, reliability, validity, ethics, credibility. So that box there tries to get you to think about those, and you could use that as a guide to writing that up individually. Really importantly, your write-up must let you revise and answer really the questions below. And remember that generic answers could score nothing or will score nothing. So state the hypothesis for your practical, state one ethical consideration, describe the outcome of your Spearmans. It should say rank, but never mind. Test for your practical investigation, and crucially explain two improvements you could make to your practical investigation. They could also ask you a straightforward essay question, evaluate your practical investigation from biological psychology. Underneath, you'll see the mark scheme answers to these, so you can see how the marks were allocated. And what you want to do is to make sure your practical aims to try and get the maximum marks out of this as you can. So use this to help you. The final thing you've got is a Word document. Your version will be blank. It just has the prompts. In red, you'll see my versions of the answers, but again, it's not necessarily going to be exactly the way you did it. So there's your aim, there's your hypotheses, there's my aggression scale, there's my hypotheses there. Looks like I've got the aggression scale wrong there. I think that's probably 204, but you can check that. And it then will talk about what's the participant sampling method, what did I do, how did I do it, how did I collect the data, what did I use. So you talk about the bus Perry, etc., etc. What was the detail of the sample? So use your spreadsheet to help you. So I've got my averages there. I could talk about my standard deviations. I could also talk about the details of the questionnaires. So design, reliability, validity, credibility. So the bus Perry, highly used and tested, developed by credible researchers, but maybe, given that it was developed in 1992, it's a little bit out of date. The media questionnaire, less well known, less tested. We're not sure how reliable it is over time or how valid it really is. Is it really measuring online content media usage? Who knows? You've got a section there for your analysis. So what did you do? What did you calculate? You could put in here pictures of the from Excel of the actual correlations. So the actual scatter graphs. You can show the Spearman's rank correlation. Obviously, you have to calculate a lot of it by hand, so you're going to have to put that in there as well. I've got some example summaries which I've taken from the spreadsheet as well. And then critically, you've got your evaluation, which has got to be specific. So the bus pair is reliable, valid questionnaire. Why? Okay. Procedure was standardized. Why specifically? Weaknesses, we didn't know. Why people answered they did. It's all closed question. So we don't really know what they're really saying and what actually they're really viewing. And really importantly, some really specific improvements. What could we do? What would be the outcome of doing that? Why would we do it? Okay, again, in the spreadsheet, it gives you some advice for that. So hopefully all those resources will help you to put that together.